Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division video today by me, Vulcan. Today I am once again joined by Val.
Hello.
Today we are going to be seeing Bumblebeepotato versus Theoman in round 4 lower bracket of the 4th Asia Pacific tournament. We are on Caumont Levant, and on the first allied side we have Bumblebee with the 3rd Armoured, and on the second allied side we have Theoman with 101st. So allied versus allied matchup. What are your thoughts going into this one, Val?
See, this is an interesting one. This is a pretty good example of a really infantry heavy deck versus a really, well, armor heavy deck, I guess. I mean, the 3rd Armoured, it's got a lot of good things going for it in other tabs. It's got some, I'm a really big fan of a lot of the half-track transports with the MGs. Really good fire support, but their infantry is not really anything to write home about. And a lot of what makes them good is some of that really, really cool armor that they get, especially later on with the jumbos.
Yeah, so we have the M4A1s in Phase A, and previously we've seen Bumblebee use those M4A1s to great effect. Bringing in both of them and sort of supporting those is definitely gives you a lot of punch, especially against the 101st, where their sort of highest AP value in Phase A is going to be the M1 guns with the 11 AP. So that's something that Bumblebee could definitely take advantage of if he decides to invest in those heavily. You do of course have like M21 mortar carriers, which are also very good for exploiting the 101st early on. However, of course, the 101st will be able to fire back with the M1 howitzers that we've seen as well. Let's have a look at some of these units going down, because we can already see on the side of Bumblebee, he's got 2 M21 mortar carriers on the top side. What do you think about that, Val?
I think it's going to be really useful against a deck like the 101st Airborne, like we talked about. It's a deck with a lot of really high quality infantry in some good places, and if you can kill them with mortars, that's probably the most efficient way to get rid of them, really.
Yeah, for sure. Like if you can pin down the elite infantry, you never actually have to fight it. You can just run up to it and surrender it with your armored rifles. Yeah, that's a very good point. Also on that top side, we do have the couple recon squads, and I think that's going to be very important to obviously maintain targets for those mortars. In the mid, it's just going to be 1 M4A1 and some more recon. On the bottom side, it's going to be 1 squad of infantry. So I feel like Bumblebee is kind of leaving himself a bit light on the front line. I think Theoman's going to maybe find a couple salients by pushing up infantry. But still, there is a lot of open ground that his infantry will suffer upon if he tries to cross it. So that's something we're going to have to look out for.
It definitely is. I think one thing to think about as well is that the 3rd Armoured is quite an expensive deck when it comes to infantry. Oh, he starts off with a recon plane there with the Grasshopper, which is common, I suppose. But I can't help but worry for him a little bit, because he doesn't have really much stopping power on this top side.
Yeah, so these M21 mortar carriers, if he's not too careful, could get overrun by things like this M22 Locust, for example. It could just drive up and kill them because there's nothing there really to stop him. But this Grasshopper is definitely interesting. I think I've seen Bumblebee use a recon aircraft before, but he never really took advantage of the information that he was given. So in this case, he's probably looking for like AT targets, I guess, and then is going to use the M21s in combination with the M4A1 to try and break through this tree line. But the Grasshopper, one thing it's not very good at is spotting infantry in trees, like in the forest. So regardless, that Grasshopper might not be as useful as Bumblebee is maybe hoping it will be, but we do see 2 squads of engineers and 2 squads of airborne rifles heading into those forests with the airborne leader Winters. On the top side is going to be Bazooka and Pathfinder, further down as an MG, 50 cal, and then on the very bottom side it's 2 units of airborne rifles and the Pathfinder. But yeah, as you can see, like the disparity of forces on the bottom side at least is well in favour of Theoman. It just is going to be a matter of time until he sort of realizes, I guess, wants to probably try and get those Pathfinders a bit further up. I think he could be very aggressive with those Pathfinders to just see what he's up against.
This is really interesting from Bumblebee. I mean, he's got this M4A1 here to protect his mortars, but you know, this Grasshopper here, there's just nothing really that Theoman's got to deal with it. There's nothing firing at it. It can sit atop, and these mortars are going to do a lot of damage.
Yeah, it is currently spotting this infantry quite well, since it's flying directly over the top of it. Usually against like an American division, you'd often have to deal with like 50 cals, and therefore a recon plane couldn't just sit on top of these forces. But in this case, it looks okay to do that. And we can see a Mustang coming out on the side of Theoman though. And that's not going to get the kill in one run. The Grasshopper will likely go down though if that P-51 comes in for a second go.
I don't know, he might just about get out. It's a very long turning, or large turning circle for this Mustang, but I think it's probably the end of the line for the Grasshopper.
Yeah, it's gone. M21 mortar carriers, they're going to do a little bit of damage with the 50 cals, but yeah, they haven't really done too much so far. There's nothing, again, to take advantage of this recon aircraft plus this mortar carrier combo. Ideally, you'd want at least one squad of infantry there to sort of contest the infantry that sort of Theoman's bringing into that tree line, but currently that's just mortar fire for the sake of mortar fire. It might do a little bit of damage here and there. You can see it has sort of damaged one of the airborne engineer squads, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to make too much of a difference. And see this M4A1 just going for a fire position command there. Surely, like, the scouts would spot if there was anything there. So I'm not entirely sure what Bumblebee's game plan is here as to how to break through this tree line.
Yeah, it kind of seems quite inactive on both fronts, really. I'm surprised that Theoman's been so passive on this bottom side. He's got a lot of units and really not done anything with them.
Yeah, I think if we go to the side of Theoman, he can see that those mortars are now M21 mortar carriers. And surely realizing the cost of 2 M21 mortar carriers plus an M4A1 is a lot of points. He could definitely start to play more aggressive with his troops on this bottom side, but now it looks like the opportunity may fall away from him since Bumblebee is sending an M8 Scott down there, which will be quite efficient at killing infantry that does get caught out in the open.
I think as well, this M37 gun, or sorry, 37mm M3 gun, it's just not ideal really for killing the Scott. It does have the AP, but you know the Scott can potentially stun or kill that in one shot, and the M3 gun does definitely not have a sort of certified kill on that.
It's got a relatively high rate of fire, and he does have the veterancy there, so it won't be so bad. It really just depends on how Bumblebee decides to micro it, and whether or not he uses his recon in advance of his M8 Scott, rather than sending the M8 Scott in first. Right, because if he gets too close to the M3 gun, it's going to have more than enough AP to get the kill. But as we can see here, as I mentioned, airborne rifles getting caught out in the open are going to take quite a bit of damage just from a quick shot there from the M8 Scott.
I think Theoman's wisely keeping that M3 gun on return fire though, so that is the move to make. We see Bumblebee doing something interesting here as well, and fire positioning directly onto where that M2HB HMG is, which is interesting sort of map awareness, shall we say. Yeah,
so he's using his scouts here quite effectively. I like the amount of recon he has, and I'm glad that he invested in that much recon early on, as it will definitely help out his heavier units like these M21s and the M4A1, and of course this M8 Scott on the bottom side. Like he's spotting these Pathfinders, for example, because of his scouts, and the M8 Scott can now take care of those. But he really just needs to make sure that he does back it up with some substance, because otherwise he's not going to be making any ground. And at the moment we can see that Theoman is sitting on the 52% territory lead with the +1, and there is now an M22 going to be running down to that bottom side. If that doesn't get supported by an AT gun or another tank anytime soon, the M22 can quite simply clean that up.
It really can. This is a kind of a worrying position for Bumblebeepotato to be in, because he's kind of losing ground on this bottom side, and if this M22 does decide to go for the Scott, it will probably kill it. I think it's just a question of whether Theoman is kind of brave enough to push up to engage that.
Yeah, the other thing is these scout squads, like, I commended the amount of recon he has, but he can't throw it away either. He needs to definitely use like armored rifles ahead of the scouts, preferably, to take these infantry engagements and the damage from those infantry engagements, rather than the scout squads themselves. Like, the scout squads are great for providing information, but they have almost no sort of combat value versus things like airborne rifles. So he's got to be very wary of that. On the top side, Theoman was a little bit cheeky with his M3 gun placement there, trying to catch out the side armor of the M4A1, but not quite allowing that to happen. And in the mid, we can see some scouts now being ripped to shreds by a 50 cal. That is not a place they want to be right now.
It's definitely not. I think it's I've got some questions about the position of this bottom mortar carrier that Bumblebee Potato's got. It's right in vision of all of the edge of that tree line.
Yeah, he could definitely just quite simply move it behind those trees just above him and have it there instead. But, I mean, regardless of whether or not they're seen or not, I think Theoman's going to know what they are. But yeah, that does leave it vulnerable to like an AT push through the tree line, like almost took advantage of the M4A1. There is a Stuart now on the top side engaging the M22. It does have the advantage of much more armor than the M22, so it's going to find a driver wounded there. If he can find the kill, that might allow him to get a bit more aggressive with this half track. Maybe bring up some more infantry to try and maybe just surround the forest. There's no reason to try and push through there, honestly. But the placement of this mortar fire is very questionable, to say the least. I'm just wondering why you would mortar the backside of that tree line. Like, what is there to gain by doing that? They're more likely to be either in the center at least, so they're not revealed to units around them, or on the edge. So yeah, that doesn't really make sense to me. And it feels like, even though he has a lot of recon, it's not really paying off for him right now.
That's definitely true. I mean, this is a really sort of awkward position for Theoman to be in, though, despite the kind of weird mortar strikes. He seems to have his there's a lot of points.
Ooh.
Okay, never mind. I take it all back. He's just killed the Stuart. That's actually swung this quite in Theoman's favour here, actually.
Yeah, we can also see on the bottom side, Theoman took out one of the M8 Scots and is now engaging the second one there. So that's 2 M8 Scots killed for Theoman on the bottom side here. So Bumblebee going to be losing that fire support for him. The M4A1's trying to roll down there and sort of respond to that aggression from Theoman. But for now, Theoman finding himself a lot of territory gain.
This is really on a knife edge here. Like, if this M4A1 on the bottom side goes down, then Bumblebee is in a really, really rough position. And, I mean, look at where the M3 gun is in relation to it. That could very well be true.
Yeah, well, the other thing is that bazooka squad. Like, Theoman has a lot of options here. He could engage with the M3 gun, start popping at the M4A1. Whilst that is occurring, go for it with the M22 at the same time, and also start running up the bazooka into the face of the M4A1 so it can't sit still and take that engagement. And that would just be a really good way to clean up the M4A1 very quickly. So he has all of the options to do so. It's just a matter of whether or not he takes that opportunity. So he's actually chosen to come in with the P51 Mustang, and the M3 gun is going to find the kill. Very, very nice job indeed. That 8 AP there definitely amplified at the 500 meter range. And yeah, very lethal shot there, does the job. So Bumblebee really on the back foot right now. And I would say at this point, it's almost Theoman's game to lose. Like, he's taken out, what, 2 M8 Scots, the M4A1, he took out the Stuart on the top side. Like, that's a lot of Phase A armor that Bumblebee Potato really can't afford to lose if he wants to stand a chance moving into Phase B, which we are now in. So it's going to be interesting to see how this continues. On the side of Theoman, I'm looking for AT guns now, like better AT guns that can sort of take away the threat of any new armor that comes in from Bumblebee, because of course he can bring in jumbos and he can bring in the M4A3 76mm now. So those are both scary things for an infantry division to deal with.
They are, but he's got a lot of position. If you look on this bottom side here, if he controls this sort of forest his front WC-25 is moving into, it becomes a real nightmare for Bumblebee Potato to push him out. And he's got nothing going for him on the top side either. So I think this game, unless we just get to C phase, unless Theoman takes too long, and then, that massive income of the third armoured sort of kind of bridges the gap. Or maybe if the jumbo just comes in and deals with everything, but I mean, Theoman's already shown he's not afraid to use planes to stun tanks, so I'm not too worried about that either for him.
Yeah, so the jumbo is on the way to this bottom side, but that's really got to do a fantastic job of supporting some armoured rifles, or like you said, it probably will be very hard for the jumbo to make too much ground. And with like airborne rifles, for example, sitting in this sort of town area, it's going to be like so damn hard for armoured rifles to contest that and break back through. The other thing is, on this top side, both the M21 mortar carriers are completely out of ammunition at the moment. They are quite simply just 50 cal half tracks, and it kind of takes away a lot of their effectiveness. Yes, they can be used like they are in the mid right now for smoke, but that is not really why he brought them in the first place, because he wasn't trying to like smoke off his infantry, for example. He was quite simply just trying to do as much damage to Theoman's infantry and his advance as possible, which in the end is a bit counterproductive to winning the game.
No, it really is, and this poor Jumbo on the bottom side is really alone. That being said though, Theoman's definitely made a bit of a miss micro here, and I think he's realised that he was just walking his rifles without kind of attack moving. And the Jumbo is now, I think, engaging them a little bit.
Was engaging the ones on the field, not the ones in the forest, which is unfortunate, because if the Jumbo came in and did get involved, maybe drove a bit closer and got involved with that airborne rifle engagement, he probably could have stopped his armoured rifles from dying. But it looks like he's a bit more concerned with the airborne rifles in the main field, or maybe he just has it on an attack move order and is paying more attention to the top side where he's microing his half tracks and mortar carriers.
He does. I mean, that's one of the great things about Steel Division. You can see where people are moving their units.
Yeah, you can just highlight them all, click shift, it's beautiful.
There's no need to go and question everything, and you can just do that. But, you know, we see this Jumbo coming in. It is kind of a hard stop. Theoman will find it very hard to push any further against that Jumbo, but, you know, again, coming to what we talked about earlier, one of the problems with the third armoured is just how expensive everything is, because you've got to bring the half tracks too. And right now, I think what Bumblebeepotato really wants is a load of infantry to sort of fill in the bottom and top sides. But, you know, he's having to make do with recon scouts and the odd LMG rifles with a half track.
Yeah, he brought in like the 2 scouts very early on the bottom side to assist the M8 Scots initially, but those got killed off very quickly indeed. Now he's bringing in some more down to this bottom side, but I'm struggling to see where they will be helpful, because against units that are in entrenched buildings, it's always very difficult to spot them, especially in like this forest, for example. And the best way, in my opinion, to spot infantry, maybe this may be a 716th thing, but is sort of to run infantry at it and just see if you get fired upon. Because and yes, scouts can do that, but you can also do that with like an armoured rifle squad, for example, and that's a lot more effective because it can take a lot more damage, giving your fire support more time to fire. Now, one important thing here is that the Bumblebeepotato with those scouts did spot the bazooka trying to move forwards, and took that out. So it takes away that threat that is definitely a big one for a Jumbo.
It does. We're seeing a little bit of ground made in this top side by Theoman, but it seems like it's really slow going, actually. He's not really moved much in the past sort of 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think it mainly comes down to infantry. Like, just in general, he's struggling to get his infantry out of this tree line and to better locations without taking fire from either the mortars, or on the bottom side it's the Jumbo. And that definitely does slow things down. So he's got to like try and use this M4 to clean up this infantry, maybe just do it quickly with a surrender or something, and then he can move his infantry up, knowing that it will be covered by that. But even so, the mortar carriers are making that very difficult nonetheless. So that's what Theoman really has to worry about at the moment. But with an AT gun coming into the mid here, that is just an M1 gun, so it probably won't be enough to take care of the Jumbo. What we can see in the mid, actually, the M5 gun is taking shots at the M4DD, or at least it was, and for some reason is now targeted onto the Pathfinders. That is a very bad mismicro there from Bumblebee, like specifically firing at the Pathfinders. Surely just get your armoured rifles to go run at them and have the M5 gun finish off this M4DD.
Well, that DD was about to die. I mean, I'm very surprised about that, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I think what possibly happened there was like the M4 got pinned, and then like the M5 auto retargeted, and maybe Bumblebee didn't realise that the M4DD was still in line of sight, but surely the fact that the M4's firing at him would give that away. So yeah, that's interesting, because now the M5 gun is not going to stop the M4DD, and that gives Theoman a very good unit to try and push and make some ground. Now on this bottom side we did see the airborne rifles take out a half track with the bazooka. Jumbo is getting involved there, and one gun almost gets a side shot. Bumblebee's going to have to be very careful with how he goes about microing this Jumbo.
I do feel kind of bad for Theo in this position though, because this M4A3, the 105mm, is so difficult to deal with when you are someone like the 101st. Your AT options are, you know, you're not the Germans. You don't have the 22 AP giant pack guns. You've got, you know, these M1 57mm and, you know, a few armored pieces. And at 1200 meter range, the 105 is really, really good at dealing with those.
Yeah. So moving into Phase B here, obviously against 3rd Armoured, they rely a lot on these like strong armoured vehicles, of course. And the 101st, they have strong infantry, strong artillery in terms of the howitzers, and then they have like strong air force. And all of those kind of suffer against strong armoured units. Like even like a bombing strike onto a Jumbo won't always pin it down because it has so much armour, and therefore you'd have to like overinvest into like maybe 2 Thunderbolts to get the job done. And that's not really something I think Theoman wants to do in terms of like his economy. Like he is going to struggle for points, especially in the late game compared to the 3rd Armoured. So that won't make too much of a difference. He's really got to find these kills with his infantry, but that's like exceptionally hard to do when honestly Bumblebee's like playing around this these scouts is allowing him to come back into this game now with the support of the Jumbo.
It is, and like you mentioned, the sheer income that the 3rd Armoured can leverage really means that once this gets to C phase in about a minute, you know, this can go the other way. This can come back into Bumblebee's favour. I know it looks like he's very far behind, but you know, you've got to consider just how effective this deck is in the late game.
Yeah, especially like just the high quality of tanks like M4A3 76s. They do well against Panthers, so let alone like the best armor that the 101st can bring out, which in this case is probably these M4DDs. And I mean, as soon as this M4DD gets dealt with, there isn't going to be too much that Theoman can really do to stop armor advance. He could maybe try and rely on a couple of AT ambushes. He has already pulled that off once on the bottom side at least. But it's something that's going to be very difficult, especially in the face of like the M4A3, like you mentioned, and of course the Jumbo. And the M8 here is going to be surrendering the airborne rifles in the bottom side, and the availability and health of these squads that Theoman's been relying on so much has kind of fallen away from him. It seems like the attrition is almost starting to get the better of him. A lot like we saw against Eugen in the previous match.
I think it's a really big sort of paradigm difference between these two decks. One of them kind of starts a bit slow, it gets really, really strong as time goes on, not just because it gets, you know, better units, it has a ridiculous amount of availability. Whereas the 101st, all those great units that make them so strong at the start of the game, you just run out of them. We do see those 2 M1 guns trying to deal with this poor M8, but he's not dead yet.
Not dead yet, but the 180 or 1 health AT guns are the deadliest, and just a matter of time until that hits the mark, I guess. But the M4A3 did manage to shoot through and take out Bofors, which Theoman brought in to protect his artillery, but that's now gone on the bottom side, so I'm not really sure we're going to see many air engagements on the side of Bumblebee. He's definitely focused solely on the ground, and that's probably the best thing to do with the 3rd Armoured, but maybe he should also invest in some AA himself. That's what I think I'd like to see moving forwards.
This M8's still alive, by the way. I just want to point that out. He survived.
The M1 gun did not do the job, but the M4A3 goes down. The M1 gun gets the better of that. Now, the M3 gun did have a shot there, but as you saw, the Jumbo just absolutely annihilated it straight away. But the M1 gun, wow, it takes out the M8 as well. It's an unvetted M1 gun. For some reason, decided to be hero today. Gets a side shot onto the M4A3, and the M8 just one after another. So definitely stopping Bumblebee's advance in its tracks for now, at least. But Bumblebee can, of course, just drive head-on into that M1 gun now, knowing its location, and probably take it out. One thing that we do have to watch out for is this M5 gun versus the M4 on the top side. Job done. for Bumblebee. Takes care of the M4DD. Very nice indeed. P51 Mustang, a little bit too late. Is not going to... Well, we'll do a lot of damage to the M5 gun. Probably not going to kill it. And, yeah, did lose the M4 already. So that is unfortunate for him. Also, these M21 mortar carriers taking out an M1 howitzer. Why was that so far up?
I've got some questions here for Theoman, to be honest.
We've seen this before from Theoman. Like, he
As
deploys his M1 howitzers so close to the front line when he doesn't need to. They have 2,000 meter range. It's what makes them so great. But here we can see the B-26B Marauder with 25 HE power bombs coming in on top of this jumbo. If he can make that fall back and show its side armor to one of these AT guns, he may find himself a kill here.
He might do, but it is retreating with some town cover, so... Okay, I say that and he starts turning around. This is not looking good for this poor jumbo. He's getting shot at from all sides, and he might still make it out. The jumbo does have crazy good armor, and it is reversing in the right direction.
Yeah,
thankfully.
it is. Yeah, it did like a full 360 because it decided to reverse away from the AT guns, which was pretty nice of the fallback mechanic there to allow him to do so. But now it's being dodgy. Now it's just turning around once again. It's taking side shots. It's bouncing those. I mean, this is incredible out of this jumbo. It's just... Oh my god. Okay, finally goes down. That is a lot of fire coming in onto that jumbo. I was just amazed that it stayed alive that long, but it just goes to show the power of the armor on that vehicle. But Scouts there going to be finishing off one of the M1 guns, and yeah, I mean, it looks pretty light on the field here from Bumblebee on the bottom side, but at the same time it is for Theoman, so I don't think either player is really going to be making too much ground down there for the time being. It's more on this top side where this double M21 mortar carrier has actually really started to come into play and started to pin down the units that is now allowing the Armoured LMG rifles and M4A1 to move forward. So interesting stuff indeed, but still a +1 for Theoman, and he is pushing towards the 1,810 point mark. So yeah, Bumblebee's got a lot of work to do.
I feel like at this point, it's probably safe to say Bumblebee will end up pushing Theoman back. I think just the income combined with the units, the fact he's broken through so well on this top side. I mean, I expected most of the big breakthrough for Bumblebee to be on this bottom side, but he kind of threw away his 105. He got it way too close. You know, it's got 1,200 meter range. There's no need to ever get hit by an AT gun that's 1,000 meters with that tank. But he's made a really good push into this top side. If he can bring those mortars to bear against the guys in, well, as he's doing now in the forests, you know, he can just walk through.
Yeah, indeed. So one thing that shouldn't have happened is the M4A3 should never be ahead of the Jumbo. And that was like his primary initial mistake, because the Jumbo can be used to just reveal the AT guns, right? We saw how much time it took to kill it, regardless of side shots. And that would allow the M4A3 to just quite simply take them out. But we can see the M10 arriving on the top side for Theoman. He is going to start to push back this M4A1, but as long as the M4A1 continues to retreat, the M10 is unlikely to catch up and find a kill there. M7 has come in on the bottom side artillery for Bumblebee, and that's going to be trying to soften up the defences in the bottom side tree lines, but I think he should probably neglect pushing down here and maybe just focus on where the breakthroughs already occurred, because the major sort of struggle with this map is getting through these two topside tree lines, and he's kind of done it on the top one but not really on the bottom one just yet. So he's got to make sure that he cleans this up. He's trying to do it with the M21 mortar carriers. We did see the M10 pop the M4A1 there, as that got a bit over ambitious in the face of that M10, but yeah, now the M4A3 Jumbo is coming in. That's going to be able to maybe assist some of these armoured LMG rifles in pushing all the way through.
I've got a question about this Grasshopper a little bit. I mean, I appreciate it's very useful against these, to spot some of these units in forest, but it's kind of late in the game. I feel like at this point, yeah, the Mustang is going to come in, and unless he's using it for bait, he's going to get shot down. Yeah,
so there's no AA on the field for Bumblebee, so he's just flying that over the battlefield here, and it's just quite simply going to get shot down. So a very, like you said, questionable purchase And, well, the second run isn't actually going to do it for the P-51, and with all the 50 cals on target, honestly, it might not end up getting the kill. That grasshopper's been falling back for a little while now.
Oh, it just goes down at the end. You can taste freedom.
Almost there, but not quite. The P-51 Mustang, though, is taking a lot of damage from the 50s. In the mid, Bazooka going to be hitting the M3A1, but this Jumbo is fire positioning just short of the 50 cal. Looks like it's trying to get killed there. This Pathfinder on the top side, I'm interested that Theoman hasn't just allowed the M1 Garands to try and kill that M5 gun there, because that'd be a nice cheeky kill to get for sure.
That one-man M5 gun just killed an M10 tank destroyer and then the command unit as well. So that Pathfinder could have saved two of his really vital units to try and hold this top side. It's just not looking good for Theoman. But the question is, is there enough time left?
Yeah. So we've got 12 minutes and 10 seconds, it says on the clock, until Theoman wins. Bumblebee is pushing a +1, however. He would definitely need to push more like a +2, +3 to get the job done. So he's got to find a breakthrough somewhere, and with that M10 dying on the top side, it definitely leaves Theoman light on the defense. A lot of his AT guns have died as well, because you saw how many he invested to try and counter the first Jumbo, and with two of them dealing with that on 1 health, they've been cleaned up now. Now there's only one left on the bottom side, and the one in the mid just got killed as the M3A1 now breaks through. So that is a big swing with all of those AT guns going down. Theoman's really running out of answers for the amount of heavy armor that is coming in on the side of Bumblebee.
Well, I mean, there's two Jumbos on the field, and honestly, it feels like his only chance of killing them is getting either kind of cheeky kills with these tank destroyers if he gets a bombing run to stun one, and you can't really rely on that. These bombers are really, really expensive, and he's just put one of them back in the shop, and there's another one coming out, and that'll be both of them gone. And then how do you react to both of these Jumbos?
Yeah, I think Theoman's bombing strikes have been better than we've seen previously, but again, like you said, it's not necessarily value for money. Especially, again, actually, I just say that, and then he goes ahead and uses a 100 or 200, over 200 point bomber to just bomb one armored LMG rifle. That's not really what you want to be doing there. And the M5 gun picking off that M10 is absolutely brutal. Theoman losing another option to take out these tanks, and I mean, an M10 is not the best option at the best of times to take out a Jumbo at least. And yeah, Jumbos, I feel like, especially in an allied versus allied matchup, can really exploit it very hard, because it's all very well against an Axis division where you have Panthers and I mean, even Pac 43s, for example. I like to dub them the Jumbo killers because they're the 23 AP. But yeah, against an allied division, there often aren't many vehicles or AT guns that have that high AP value, and therefore the Jumbo can just run around them.
Look at this recon mortar carrier in the middle here. He's run out of supplies, and he's just sending it in. But what you said about the Jumbos is so true. In allied versus allied, there aren't these super high AP options to deal with them. Your best chance is either catching them with the sneaky bazooka squad or going for the stun with a plane and then killing it, when it's armor's turn. But he used both of his bombers on cheap infantry units, so I'm not sure what he's going to do with that.
Yeah, and now this M1 howitzer is in trouble. He's bringing up some more infantry for this bottom side, but it's kind of delaying the inevitable push here from Bumblebee, and I guess that's all he really needs to do. He just needs to delay this push. If this game carried on for another 20 minutes or 30 minutes, he would inevitably lose. But in this case, he has 9 minutes to play with. Can he make it work? That's the question. Although, not if he allows his airborne rifles to die without being unloaded. That is not good at all. M20 Command did manage to finish off that mortar carrier, like you said, that got a bit ahead of itself. But now we can see in P-51 Mustang just coming in to bomb some stuff on the top side. And the B-26B is back on the bottom side. Can that find a nice bombing strike onto these tanks? Well, it looks like Bumblebee is going to give it to him as he actually moves underneath the bombing strike with his Jumbo.
He's lining it up.
Yeah, he's like, I'll give you something towards the end of this game. Just toying.
It's just got to the point now where he doesn't have anything to exploit that. That would have been a couple of minutes ago, but now, I mean, the key here and the thing we have to see is will Bumblebee have the initiative to move fast enough to get the winning tick here?
Yeah, I was just actually thinking about that. Like, with that bombing strike coming in, is that really what Bumblebee wants right now? Probably not, because as long as those are falling back, they are not advancing and making him ground. But at the end of the day, with the M20 command going down there to the M5 in the mid, and these Jumbo and the M4A3 still advancing further up, they can destroy these airborne rifles, and as soon as those are gone, well, the front line's going to swing very quickly to like a 65%, 70% territory lead because there's nothing behind them. So at the moment, things going well for Bumblebee, but can he win in time? It's always something to question, and he's even on a +2 now, and it still says that the victory is going to go to Theoman. So we're definitely looking for a +3 or even a +4 to get there, and it's going to be really, really close.
It might actually be a +4. I think he can get it, to be honest. He's got the material. He can just kind of walk through here, and he should be able to get it, but
he's just got to get a move on, though, and he can't necessarily play too slow at all. Like, I like the way that he's brought in these M8s later on, because they sort of give him enough information to spot the sort of not very good stealth units in tree lines. So as this M8 Scott gets closer, it will eventually spot the airborne rifles, I think before they get in range of their bazooka, although they're saying that, I think they already are. That B-26 is going to bomb the M4A3. The airborne rifle is definitely looking for a Zuka kill, but yeah, the M8, as soon as it gets into line of sight, is going to spot that, and they just get pinned immediately. You would not want to be one of those airborne rifles right now. Look at that 50 cal fire. Oh lord, they are just goners.
Oh, yeah. So 3 points is going to get us a draw, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. So the way that it works in this game is regardless of whether or not it's a draw, most points wins. So, I mean, I'm not a mathematician. I can't work out whether or not that +3 is going to be enough points in time. But if we see a +4 now, then that will most likely push him over the edge. So that, again, is what Bumblebee is looking for. And he's definitely pushing towards that very quickly. 75% would be the +4. So that's what we're looking for now. If you can find and take out this airborne rifle squad in the orchard, then I think he's going to swing that way very quickly.
He is indeed, and I just can't help but feel that these Marauders, he's not really got enough use out of them to be worth that massive investment. 200 points each.
And now, once again, they're just kind of slowing the inevitable at the moment, because there's nothing to, again, take advantage of the bombing strikes. Usually, what you'd do with like a bomber in this case is you'd bomb the heavy tank, you would then either assault it with your own like AT guns or tanks, or you'd try and surrender it. But there is none of those options available to Theoman right now. He just has a bunch of aircraft that are pretty much completely useless if they aren't supported by units on the ground. And yeah, Theoman is very quickly being surrounded on this top side, as well as the M4A3 is going to fast move up behind that defensive line. And I really think that Theoman has just run out of steam here. He's just run out of units that he can bring in and use to sort of stop this aggression out of Bumblebee. Bumblebee's pushing the 72%. It's only a few more percentage, and he is there. So this is scary times for Theoman. And I mean, Bumblebee must be counting his blessings, as this has just fallen into his lap after he held on for so long. I can really like commend Bumblebee's sort of basically not surrendering and not giving up. Like, his persistence has definitely paid off. And we are seeing a +4, but no confirmation of victory just yet. It's just going to be so damn close. We're going to go straight down to the wire. It's insane.
It is, yeah. And I mean, to be honest, this is kind of like, this is almost the poster boy of what happens when the 3rd Armoured against the 101st, when it goes this late. You know, it is just crushing. It's absolutely crushing, because poor Theoman, he just has no way of getting the material to sort of stop this. And the material that he has, the units he has, they're not built to deal with this. They are really, really lacking in the super heavy tank killing department. And unfortunately, Bumblebee's got a lot of super heavy tanks.
Yeah, indeed. And we can see that the final units are starting to be surrounded here. Airborne rifles on top side. We've got the 50 cal there and some glider leaders. We are seeing now a +5 And that is going to confirm that Bumblebee is going to win the game in 3 minutes and 10 seconds. He's cut off the bottom side land spawn, which kind of constricts Theoman to the top side of the map. And yeah, like I say, just the persistence has paid off here. I think a lot of players in the competitive scene at the moment do tend to kind of surrender early, when often there is opportunities to come back late game. In this case, I mean, Bumblebee had the third armoured, right? So 150 points in Phase C is always going to be a reason to stick around, and in this case he's really taken full advantage of that to just completely clean up the majority of Theoman's units. And I don't think I've seen a game go this long that has painted the map in one colour so much. Like, this is going to be both spawns stopped, right? So Theoman cannot bring in any more forces for the last 2 minutes and 15 seconds of the map other than these aircraft. And it's just a matter of Bumblebee cleaning them up, which is just incredible. I think B26B there is actually going to end up almost killing his own Pathfinders.
The 5D chess from Bumblebee, he knows that he can, like, if he targets the bombing strike on the jumbo, if he gets close enough to the Pathfinders, it'll be danger close and it'll kill them too.
It didn't quite do any damage, but potential for surrender, well, kind of gone. Well, it was a recon squad, so it wouldn't surrender anyway. But yeah, it's just interesting that the Pathfinders got in the way of that bombing strike and now can't even get their AT grenade off, right, to do the damage. Now, that M21 mortar carrier did find itself surrounded, so more units are once again flooding in from Theoman. He is bringing in more. He's not giving up, but at this point, with Bumblebee fast approaching Theoman's score of 1,823 points. Just incredible. So this, guys, just shows you anything can happen. Even if your opponent is 1,823 points ahead of you, when you have 0 on the board, there is still a chance for victory. And yeah, I don't think I've seen such a comeback in, like, the entire time that I've been playing a Steel Division. Like, I've seen some good comebacks, but this kind of tops it all, I think.
Again, this is what happens if someone who's playing the third armoured kind of gets this late stage where you just outscale your opponent so hard. And I've got to commend Bumblebee because he did, like you said, he hung on. It was looking really, really grim. Like, when he lost his jumbo at that bottom side, I was very concerned for him that Theoman would be able to make some proper breakthroughs there. So maybe get some infantry all the way to sort of back forest on the left-hand side, but that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case, and, you know, it's paid off for him with this pretty stunning victory.
Yeah, the other thing that was really interesting was just how Bumblebee relied on so much recon infantry early on, which I think, like, inadvertently kind of gave him a lot of late game availability, because, like, he was basically running forwards with scouts, right, and then supporting them with armoured vehicles, and that then allowed him in the later game to use his infantry way more effectively against a weakened 101st. But anyway, after the 40 minutes, the full 40 minutes, we can see that Bumblebeepotato is going to be taking the victory over Theoman. And the kills and losses relatively close, but nothing that Theoman could do about a lot of the units that were left on the field at the end there, which really made the massive difference in territory, and incredible, incredible game.
Yeah, no, it was a... Like, if you look at the end of that game, you'll think, oh my god, that looks really one-sided, but there was a massive opportunity for Theoman to really punch through with his sort of small victories earlier on and try and make a bigger hold. But unfortunately for him, and you know, we talked about this, it's just the way it goes. If you take that long against a deck like the Third Armoured, a player who's as competent as Bumblebee is, you know, he's going to punish you for it, and you will just be swarmed.
Yeah, well, Bumblebee sort of started off very slow, I would say, at the start of the tournament. He was relatively inexperienced, but I think as he's come through the tournament, he's definitely, like, matured as a player, and I think that he's taken a lot from his previous games and applied it to the next one, and that's definitely, like, allowed him to push through. Like, the first 2 games I saw him play the Third Armoured, he didn't bring out a single jumbo, and I was just, like, sat there face palming. But as soon as he starts bringing out the jumbos, he looks so much better on this third Armoured, and it'd be interesting to see how he does against his next matchup in the lower bracket round 5. So that'll be something to watch out for. One thing that I was just looking at was the amount of kill difference in each phase. So if we look at the history tab, we can see that the majority of the kills are on the side of Theoman, and they are relatively significant, right? You have the 2 M8 Scots going down, the Stuart going down. They shot down the Grasshopper early on. M4A1 died, and that is a ton of points. Like all these half tracks dying, all of the armored rifles and scouts units are dead. Like that's when you can really see like the effectiveness of the 101st, and that's something that Theoman definitely could have exploited a lot more. But as soon as that jumbo came in, things started to even themselves out a bit, and then it really starts to turn into like blue kills more than it does red kills. And it just shows as you continue to sort of scroll down, you get these massive like swathes of like blue kills coming through, where obviously Bumblebee was pushing that ground extremely hard, and Theoman had nothing left to deal with it. Nor did he really have the AP to deal with jumbos in the first place. So, yeah, not finding as... I mean, he still did a good job of getting to 1,800 points, but it wasn't enough. And, yeah, incredibly interesting game for sure.
It's really, really an unfortunate kind of tale as old as time where, you know, not only are you playing against the third Armoured in the late game and you didn't quite get the knockout punch you wanted, but, like, you're playing as an allied nation who has... honestly pretty mediocre sort of AT options, or at least for the 101st against those jumbos. All he really had was sneaky bazookas, you know, maybe some cheeky side shots and the bombers, but I felt as the pressure mounted on him later and later on, Theoman really stopped coordinating as well as he was playing earlier on. There might have been a little bit of tilt there, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think maybe Theoman was expecting Bumblebee to maybe surrender and was like pushing on him that hard that he was like maybe got a bit complacent, and then just kind of allowed Bumblebee to reset and get that jumbo in. And as soon as the jumbo came in, that was when Bumble started to play around that a lot more, and he definitely focused on that, which allowed him to make a difference in this game and sort of bring it back to where it was. But yeah, a lot of these late game tanks have a ton of kills on them. But that, guys, is where we're going to be leaving it for today. Hopefully you've enjoyed that game. It was incredibly exciting, right down to the wire there towards the end. Theoman eventually ending up with no territory left, but I mean, exemplary sort of effort, I guess. Wasn't really paid off in the end, but there we go.
Great job.
Indeed. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
See ya.
Goodbye.